Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you powerful tales of resilience and transformation. Imagine being cast out by your own family, told you were a failure, only to rise from the ashes and build something greater than they ever imagined. Madison Reynolds was disowned for choosing passion over prestige, but what her family never realized was that she was creating an empire. Today, we take you on a journey of betrayal, redemption, and ultimate success. Hit subscribe to begin today's story and witness the rise of the phoenix. The text from my mother was short and direct. Family meeting. 7 p.m. Non-negotiable. I stared at the words on my screen, my chest tightening in anticipation of what was coming. Whatever waited for me inside that house wasn't going to be good. It had been months since I last stepped foot in my parents' home in Los Angeles. A grand, sprawling mansion in one of those neighborhoods where every lawn looked like it had been trimmed with surgical precision. Where luxury cars lined the driveways like trophies of success. My family thrived in this world. Where appearances were everything. Where wealth equaled worth. And me. I was the outlier. The black sheep. The failure. As I stood outside the heavy oak door, my fingers hovered over the brass knocker. The weight of expectation, of years of subtle disapproval and forced smiles, pressed down on me. My stomach twisted with an old, familiar ache, the feeling of not being enough. Not accomplished enough. Not respectable enough. Not one of them. Before I could knock, the door swung open. My mother, Karen, stood there, perfectly composed as always. Her makeup was immaculate. Her pearl earrings in place. Her lips pressed into a thin line of practiced politeness. "You're late," she said. I glanced at my watch. 6:58 p.m. In my family, anything less than 10 minutes early was considered disrespectful. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of polished wood and expensive candles filling my senses. The living room was arranged like a courtroom, with me as the defendant. My sister, Emma, sat on the edge of the leather sofa, her lawyer's briefcase beside her. Olivia, fresh from her hospital shift, still wore her scrubs like a badge of honor. Ryan, my younger brother, was glued to his phone, barely acknowledging me. And then there was my father, William, standing by the fireplace like a general before a battle. His hands were clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. "Sit down, Madison," he commanded, motioning toward a lone armchair facing the rest of them. I hesitated for a fraction of a second before taking my seat. The setup felt eerily familiar, like those intervention shows where the family gathers to confront an addict. Except my crime wasn't addiction. It was choosing my own path. I took a deep breath. "What's this about?" Emma reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick document. Her movements measured. Professional. "We've been discussing the family's future," she said in her courtroom voice. "And we've come to a decision. A necessary one. For the good of the family," my mother added, her tone deceptively soft. She handed me the papers. I scanned the text, my brain struggling to process the cold, legal terminology. The words blurred together, but a few phrases jumped out at me. Formal dissolution of familial ties. Relinquishment of inheritance rights. Termination of family association. I swallowed. "You're disowning me? It's not personal," Ryan said without looking up from his phone. "It's business." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Business? I'm your daughter. Your sister. How is this not personal?" My father's voice was measured. "Practiced. Your choices reflect poorly on the family name. Your little craft hobby," my mother began. "My business," I corrected, my hands tightening around the papers. Emma gave me a pitying look, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. "Making trinkets in your apartment isn't a business, Madison." Olivia scoffed. "Do you know how embarrassing it is when my colleagues ask what my sister does? I tell them you play with glue and glitter, and they laugh." I exhaled through my nose. willing myself to stay calm. I had spent years enduring their condescension, their subtle jabs, their carefully disguised disappointment. But this was different. This was final. We gave you every opportunity, my mother continued. The best schools. The right connections. The resources to do anything you wanted. And you threw it all away for, she waved a hand dismissively, arts and crafts. I stared down at the document again. My hands were steady, though my chest felt like it was collapsing inward. They had never understood me. Never even tried to. And they never would. I looked up, meeting my father's gaze. Where do I sign? A flicker of surprise crossed my mother's face. She had expected tears. Begging. Maybe even an emotional breakdown. But I had nothing left to give them. Emma recovered quickly, pointing to the bottom of the page. Initial here. Sign here. There's a notary waiting in the study. 10 minutes later. It was done. I was no longer officially a part of the Reynolds family. The weight of their judgment, their expectations, their disapproval, all of it lifted from my shoulders. As I headed for the door, my father spoke one last time. I hope you understand, he said. This is for the best. I turned back to face them, taking in their carefully composed expressions. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. You know what's funny? I said. My voice calm. You're so obsessed with success. With reputation. With the family name, but you never once asked me what I've actually built. My mother's brow furrowed. Madison. No, I cut her off. You've made your choice. Now you get to live with it. I walked out without another word. The door clicked shut behind me. Too soft a sound for the magnitude of what had just happened. My phone buzzed. A notification from my business account. Another major order. I glanced at the number. It pushed my monthly revenue well into 6 figures. Again. A slow smile spread across my face as I walked to my car. My mind drifted to the stack of orders waiting to be filled. The upcoming collaboration with a major retailer. The feature article being written about my innovative approach to sustainable craftsmanship. They wanted to cut me off. Fine. They would learn soon enough what they had thrown away. Success, after all, is the sweetest revenge. 3 days had passed since I was officially disowned. 3 days of silence from my family, as if I had never existed. But in those 3 days, something else had happened, something far more important. Orders had exploded. I sat at my work table in my Brooklyn studio, carefully applying gold leaf to the edges of a reclaimed wood mirror. My hands moved with precision. The act of creating grounding me. Around me. Shelves overflowed with finished pieces, handcrafted home decor made from salvaged materials. I had built reclaimed luxe from the ground up, turning discarded objects into luxury statement pieces. What my family dismissed as playing with glue and glitter had transformed into a thriving business. And now, after the Better Homes and Gardens feature, it was growing faster than I ever imagined. You did what? Mara, my best friend and unofficial business consultant, nearly knocked over her coffee as she gawked at me from across the workshop table. I signed the papers, I said, placing the mirror aside to dry. No arguments. No second guessing. Just signed and walked out. She blinked. You mean you didn't fight back? Not even a dramatic speech? Oh, there was some drama, I admitted with a smirk. But not from me. Mara exhaled, shaking her head. And your inheritance? The family connections? Just gone. I set down my tools and met her gaze. What inheritance? A share in a car dealership I never wanted. The privilege of being told I'm a disappointment at every family dinner. I gave a dry laugh. No thanks. Before Mara could respond, the studio door burst open. Ezra, my marketing guru and business partner, stormed in. His laptop clutched like a lifeline. His blue eyes were wide with barely contained excitement. Madison, you need to see this. He spun the screen toward me, and my breath caught. Style and Home magazine, feature on sustainable luxury designers. And there it was, reclaimed luxe. Front and center. They had called me the artisan revolutionizing sustainable home decor. Mara's jaw dropped. Holy, she turned to me. Madison. These numbers. Is this really how much you're making? I nodded, still absorbing the reality of it. That's just last month. Ezra grinned. Wait until they see what we've got planned next. The eco-friendly packaging initiative alone is going to. My phone buzzed. Another order. Then another. Then another. What's happening? I asked. Ezra refreshed his screen. His eyes widened. The article just went live. We're trending on social media. The sustainable living community is going crazy over your designs. I turned to look at the shelves lining the walls. Each piece crafted from materials others had thrown away. Discarded wood. Transformed into elegant wall art. Salvaged metal. Reshaped into striking sculptures. Forgotten glass. Reborn as stunning light fixtures. This was what I had built. This was what my family never saw. Ezra ran a hand through his hair, still staring at his laptop. We need to scale up. I'm getting inquiries from 3 major retailers. They want exclusive collections. Mara let out a low whistle. Your family has no idea, do they? I picked up a delicate wind chime I had finished that morning. Made from sea glass and driftwood. No, I said simply. They never bothered to look. Too busy being embarrassed by their crafty daughter to notice she was building an empire. Ezra's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Then looked up. Stunned. You're not going to believe this. He turned the screen toward me. Business Forward magazine, rising entrepreneurs in sustainable luxury. A woman's name appeared at the top of the email. Catherine Chen, senior editor. She wanted to talk. Not just about my business, but about my story. A cover story. Mara clapped a hand over her mouth. Madison. Do you understand how huge this is? Business Forward doesn't just feature companies. They make companies. Ezra was still grinning. Their features can make or break brands. And they're interested in you. I exhaled. Heart pounding. This was it. This was what success looked like. And my family. They had thrown me away before they even saw what I had become. The morning after the article went viral, I woke up to a flood of notifications. My phone screen was filled with unread messages, missed calls, and social media mentions. Orders had doubled overnight. I wasn't just trending. I was everywhere. I took a deep breath before opening my email. And there it was, an official message from Business Forward. Subject: Cover feature inquiry, Madison Reynolds. Reclaimed luxe. Catherine Chen, their senior editor, wanted an exclusive interview for a cover story. My heart pounded as I read through the details. National exposure. A deep dive into my business. My process. My success story. I stared at the email, my hands gripping my coffee mug so tightly I thought it might crack. This was it. This was the kind of feature that turned small businesses into industry giants. Before I could fully process it, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. This is Madison. A crisp, professional voice responded. Ms. Reynolds. This is Catherine Chen from Business Forward magazine. We'd love to feature you in our upcoming issue on rising entrepreneurs in the sustainable luxury market. Do you have time to talk? I swallowed. Absolutely. We scheduled an interview for the following week. And when I hung up, I let out a slow breath. This was happening. Across the room, Ezra and Mara were staring at me, their expressions a mix of shock and excitement. What was that? Ezra asked, though from the look on his face, he already knew. I set my phone down and grinned. Cover story. Mara let out a delighted scream and grabbed my hands. Oh my God. Madison, this is it. This is your moment to show them all. I knew who she meant by them. But I wasn't doing this for my family. I was doing this for me. Over the next few days, things moved at lightning speed. Ezra revamped our online presence, ensuring our website could handle the surge in traffic. Mara helped organize our production schedule to meet the overwhelming demand. We even hired 3 additional assistants to keep up. I barely had time to think until the first text arrived. Emma, we need to talk. Urgent. Family matters. I stared at the message, my pulse steady. I hadn't heard from my sister since the night they disowned me. Now, suddenly, it was urgent. I didn't respond. An hour later, another message. Olivia, saw the magazine cover. Why didn't you tell us? Call me ASAP. I exhaled sharply, setting my phone down. It was almost laughable. They had pushed me out of their lives, erased me as though I was an embarrassment. And now that I was making headlines, now that the world was paying attention, they suddenly cared. I wasn't falling for it. But the messages didn't stop. Ryan, Mom's upset. You should call her. Then, the one that made me pause. Dad, we should discuss your recent publicity. My publicity. Not your success. Not I'm proud of you. Just business. As always. I tossed my phone onto the work table, rolling my shoulders. They want something. Ezra looked up from his laptop. Of course they do. Mara crossed her arms. Are you going to respond? I hesitated. Then my phone buzzed again. Mom, family dinner. Sunday. 7 p.m. We have much to discuss. Mara leaned over my shoulder, reading the text. You're not going. Right. I picked up my phone, staring at the message. I typed a response. Me, I'll be there. I wasn't going for them. I was going for me. Sunday arrived too quickly. I parked my car outside my parents' Beverly Hills home, staring up at the grand estate that had once been mine. 2. The sprawling mansion. The perfectly manicured lawn. The gleaming luxury cars in the driveway, everything still exuded wealth and power. But for the first time in my life, I felt no connection to it. No sense of belonging. I took a deep breath and stepped out of my car, my heels clicking against the stone driveway. I had chosen my outfit carefully, a designer dress that exuded quiet confidence. One that my family would immediately recognize as expensive. Paid for, of course. With my money. The door opened before I even had a chance to knock. My mother stood there, her expression unreadable. Madison, she said. A little too warmly. It's been too long. I didn't respond. Instead, I stepped past her into the house. The familiar scent of polished wood and expensive perfume filling my senses. The living room was arranged just as I expected, my father standing by the fireplace. My siblings seated on the pristine white sofas. It was the same room where they had disowned me. Let's not waste time, I said, taking the same armchair they had once made me sit in. Why am I here? Emma, always the lawyer, was the first to speak. We've been discussing the family's future, she said, using the same phrasing as before. And we believe there's an opportunity for collaboration. Collaboration. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. Is that what we're calling it? My father cleared his throat. Your publicity has been remarkable, he said. As if that was the only thing about me worth acknowledging. The media attention. The magazine covers. The interviews. It's all quite impressive. I met his gaze. Impressive enough to suddenly be family again? Olivia shifted uncomfortably. Ryan looked down at his phone, avoiding my eyes. My mother reached forward, her voice soft. Madison. We made a mistake. We were short-sighted. I arched an eyebrow. And what changed? Silence. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. It wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that the family dealership is struggling, would it? More silence. Then, finally, my father exhaled. The market has shifted, he admitted. The transition to electric vehicles has been challenging. And the bank has called in our loans. Ah. So that was it. They weren't here to make amends. They were here to ask me for help. I tapped my nails against the armrest. Let me get this straight. I said slowly. 3 months ago. You decided I was a disgrace. You signed legal documents to erase me from this family. And now that your business is failing, you want me to swoop in and save you? Emma, to her credit, had the decency to look ashamed. It's not like that. Isn't it? I cut her off. I turned to my father. How much? His eyes flickered with hesitation. How much do you need? I clarified. He exhaled. 30 million. I let out a low whistle. And what do I get in return? The dealership. Emma said quickly. We merge it with reclaimed Lux. Create a sustainable vehicle line. Integrate your brand. It's a win-win. I studied them. My family. The people who had cast me out without a second thought. And now, here they were, willing to give me control not because they believed in me, but because they had no other choice. I stood up, smoothing down my dress. I'll think about it. My mother looked hopeful. Really? I met her eyes. But if I do this, we do it my way. And with that, I walked out. For the first time, I wasn't the one being dismissed. I was the one holding all the power. I didn't reply to my family after that night. I needed time to think. Not about whether I wanted to help them, I had already made my decision. But about the terms. If I was going to do this, it had to be on my terms, not theirs. Then, 3 days later, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual handwritten letter, addressed to me in my father's familiar, precise handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Madison. I've written this letter 100 times in my head. And nothing seems right. Nothing can excuse what we did. We thought we were protecting the family. But we were blind. Blind to what you had built. Blind to who you were. And we lost you because of it. We are losing everything now, the dealership, the home, the reputation we clung to so desperately. But the truth is, we lost something far more important the day we signed those papers. We lost you. I know it's too late to ask for forgiveness. But if there is any part of you that still sees us as family, I ask you for one thing, not money, not business, just a chance. A chance to be the father I should have been. For what it's worth. I'm proud of you. Not because of your success, but because of who you've always been. Dad. My hands trembled slightly as I folded the letter. It was the first time in my life my father had ever told me he was proud of me, and it had taken losing everything for him to finally see my worth. Before I could fully process the emotions building inside me, my phone buzzed with another message. Olivia, Mom's in the hospital. Stress and exhaustion. She keeps asking for you. I stared at the screen. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend it didn't matter. But it did. I reached for my jacket. Ezra. I called out to my business partner. Change of plans. We're making a stop before the MoMA meeting. He raised an eyebrow. Where? I grabbed the letter and tucked it into my bag. The hospital. The hospital room was eerily quiet when I stepped inside. My mother looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Her makeup was gone. Her hair slightly disheveled. Dark circles underlined her eyes. Evidence of sleepless nights. And when she turned her head and saw me standing there, her lips trembled. Madison. I hesitated. Just for a moment. Before stepping closer. Mom. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached out a hand. Her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. So sorry. I took her hand. Feeling how frail it was in mine. I know. I whispered. She clung to me as if afraid I would disappear again. And maybe, in a way, she feared that I would. We sat in silence for a while. No grand apologies. No justifications. Just the quiet understanding that things had broken. And that maybe, just maybe, they could be repaired. After a while, My father stepped into the room. He didn't speak. Just looked between the two of us. And then he nodded. As if accepting what had been left unsaid. We have a lot to talk about, I finally said. He exhaled. Looking relieved. Yes. We do. And for the first time in months, I sat down with my family not as the outcast, but as the one holding the future in my hands. The conference room in the hospital was silent except for the soft hum of fluorescent lights. My siblings sat across from me, their faces tense. My father stood at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. The last time we had all been in a meeting like this, they had handed me papers severing me from the family. Now, I was the one holding the papers. I slid the documents across the table. This is the new company structure. Emma picked up the papers first. Her lawyer's mind scanned the contents quickly. You're restructuring the dealership? I nodded. We're turning it into Phoenix Electric. Sustainable luxury vehicles. Integrating recycled materials into the design. An entirely new approach to what the Reynolds name stands for. Ryan frowned. And you're CEO, I said firmly. Non-negotiable. Dad stays on as chairman emeritus in an advisory role. You and Olivia get shares based on contribution, not family ties. Emma, if you want in, we'll discuss your role later. But make no mistake, I run this company. Silence. Then, my father reached for the contract. He flipped through the pages. His fingers steady but thoughtful. This is fair, he said finally. His voice quiet. Emma let out a soft breath. More than fair. I met Olivia's gaze. No more judgment. No more shame about my choices. If we do this, we do it right. She swallowed hard. Then nodded. Agreed. Ryan leaned back in his chair. It's a hell of a deal. He smirked. We'd be stupid to say no. I exhaled slowly. The old version of me, the one who had spent her whole life trying to prove herself to them, would have felt relieved. Would have craved their acceptance. But I didn't need it anymore. I had built something on my own. And now, if they wanted to be a part of it, they would have to accept me exactly as I was. No conditions. No apologies. I reached into my bag and pulled out another document, the one they had given me months ago. The one severing me from the family. I placed it in the middle of the table. One last thing, I said. I want this destroyed. Publicly. At our first board meeting. My father nodded. Consider it done. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't just earning a place at the table. I had built the damn table myself. And now, it was time to take my seat. The grand opening of Phoenix Electric was a spectacle. Reporters, investors, and customers flooded the showroom, admiring the sleek, sustainable vehicles and the art installations that adorned the space. The chandelier above, crafted from reclaimed car parts, cast fractured light across the room, a symbol of reinvention. My father stood beside me as the cameras flashed. You saved this family, he said, voice thick with emotion. I shook my head. No. I built something new. As I walked through the crowd, I realized something profound. Family isn't about blood or legacy. It's about the people who believe in you when no one else does. And sometimes, when everything breaks, it's not the end, it's the beginning of something greater. Like the phoenix, I had risen. And this time, I was soaring. Subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring real-life tales.